This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion.
I try not to look at too much news. It's just insanity these days. Literal insanity. People are losing their minds, or they've already lost their mind. Today, I want to talk about 4 issues, and I want to connect them to a solution. These 4 issues are not really related, at least on the surface. Let's see what you think after I address them. First, let me start with LeBron James' agent, Rich Paul. I know very little about Rich Paul. I know he's a longtime friend of LeBron James, who is now one of the most powerful sports agents in the NBA. This guy, Rich Paul, is. And guess what? The NCAA, they don't like Rich Paul because Rich Paul doesn't like them. There's all these crazy rules in the NCAA. And now one of the rules says that an agent, this guy Rich Paul, must have a college degree to talk to underclassmen, those kids that might be testing the water for the NBA draft. Here's Rich Paul, one of the most successful agents ever, representing the biggest players in the NBA. And now the NCAA, a bunch of morons generally, the NCAA is now saying that to be Rich Paul, you need to have a college degree. What? That's insane. People want to talk about racism? There is your racism. Front and center, loud and clear. I made this statement in a debate online. Immediate pushback. People can't see that it's racism. They come at me with all these logical fallacies. But when you reduce it down to, at its basic level, why would the NCAA isolate one particular agent? Because he's a bug in their side. They don't like him. And he happens to be a black guy. Can I say for sure it's 100% racism? No, I can't. Deep down in my gut, does it sure look like it? Absolutely 100%, especially given the history. But what's so interesting about the point here is not the story. It's the reaction to my statement, to watch people think, or in this case, not think. That's one point. Just hold on to that one for a second. A second point of thinking, a second issue I want to address, also with LeBron James. In that first conversation, somebody started talking about how LeBron James doesn't make other players around him good. LeBron has won 3 championships. He's been to like 9 or 10 finals. You might not like his personality, but the guy's been pretty successful, and most people seem to agree he's the second best or third best player to ever play the damn game. That's pretty amazing. But then somebody came at me with the idea of they didn't like that LeBron James is creating super teams. That didn't sit well with them. And I said, well, what's the difference between the Lakers and the Celtics in the 1980s? They had like 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on each team. So I pushed this guy into a corner, which I'm known to do, because when you push somebody into a corner, they usually don't have a response. And he didn't have a response. He started talking about how Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and Magic Johnson made the players on their team into Hall of Fame players. Huh? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Moses Malone, Kevin McHale, Scottie Pippen did not become Hall of Fame players because of another player. So what was the real issue here? The real issue is this particular individual did not like the fact that LeBron was creating super teams, even though the NBA has had super teams forever. He said, well, it ruins competition. I said, hold on. In the 1980s, the only teams that won the NBA championship were the Lakers and the Celtics. What kind of competition was that? So again, what was the issue here? It was a thinking issue, a logic issue. Now, here's the real hot one. The third issue, guns in America. It's completely awful that we've got lunatics that are killing mass groups of people. It's also completely awful that in inner city Chicago, inner city Baltimore, they kill more people on a daily basis all the time, and that's never in the news. But to watch the debates and arguments about guns and gun control, you got to step back for a second. Do you think it's one variable? Is it just the idea that a gun is available? Well, there is a Second Amendment right in America. You do have the right to bear arms. I watched an interview with the mayor of New York City. He was asked point blank, is it okay? Do you agree that everyone in New York City should be able to own a firearm in their house? He refused to answer the question. He absolutely refused to answer the question. So when I watch the gun debate, big picture, I got to step back. It's not just one variable. It's not just the gun. It's mental health. It's drugs. It's alienation. It's isolation. It's evil people. It's all of these things. If somebody thinks that the damn gun itself, the object, is something that you can fix and then the problem goes away, if somebody really says that, they are either lying or they're stupid. And I'm stealing that line from the author Scott Adams. It's a multivariable problem. Absolutely, we do not want lunatic kids with firearms blowing people away. And if they have a high-powered gun, it makes it a lot easier. But you also don't look at the 300 million plus people in America that are perhaps law-abiding, that might already have a gun, and they're not killing anybody. So the first thing you do after a shooting is go after the people that did nothing and ask for their gun. It's a thinking problem. How do you think your way out of this problem? It's not an emotional problem. Just saying you can't even own a gun, what the mayor of New York City was saying, or as other politicians might be saying, we will take your guns away, period. That's not really a starter. Try a gun roundup in America. It's not going to happen. It doesn't even make a difference whether I'm pro or anti a gun. I just know how many people have guns who are perfectly honest, reasonable people. But if you show up at their house and say you're going to take their gun away, their reason goes away. And then you got a fight on your hands. So it's a multi-pronged approach to try and solve this kind of mass killing violence in America. You got to start there. If you can't start there, again, you're either lying or you're stupid. If you can't admit that it's many issues, not just one issue, I've put guns on the table. Guns are on the table. That's a problem, that some crazy jackass can get a high-powered gun and kill people in seconds. 20 of them in seconds. That's insane. But it's just as insane to say that the gun itself is the only problem, and all of these other issues, cultural issues, violence issues in society, pornography, all these other things, we can't talk about that? That doesn't make any sense. Again, my third particular issue here on guns, it's a thinking issue. Look at the way people rationalize, how they conceptualize, their use of logic. We've not advanced to this point in 2019 based on pure emotion. It's about thinking. That's how we solve problems. That's how we move forward. Here's a fourth example. Not a famous person or a famous situation. There was some young lady who recently was talking about that she had taken out $500,000 in loans. $500,000 US dollars in loans, $500,000 in loans to go to school, to get a shit degree, a degree that's utterly worthless, probably some just nonsensical liberal arts degree that she cannot turn into money. So now she's living her life with a $500,000 noose hanging around her neck, with a shit degree, and she doesn't know what the fuck to do. She doesn't know how to make money. Her job's never going to pay it off. How do you solve that problem? What's the real problem there? There's another thinking issue there. What the hell was she thinking? It doesn't work. It didn't work from when she started. She should have known. And then society goes ahead and gives her all this money and then pats her on the head like a snowflake. Oh, good job, young lady. Good job. You've now gone to school. You've got a degree and you got a $500,000 debt hanging around your neck. Again, it's a thinking issue. Where is the thinking? I mean, all of these particular debates or cultural problems, individual problems, it just takes a clarity of mindset to write it all down. But when you have politics in play, and when you have people on either side who want their power, they will say anything to keep that power. They will say anything to get the power from the other side. I mentioned him earlier for the line, "You're either stupid or you're lying." Scott Adams brought up this young lady and the $500,000 loan. And he said, we've reached a point with technology that perhaps over 50%, he said over 60%, but let's say over 50% of the population can't deal anymore. They don't know how to think. They're lost in the modern world. Education's not going to help them. More school's not going to help them. There's just something in them where they don't get it. They don't get how to operate. They don't know what to do. And I implore you to take a listen to Adams discussing this, because it swayed me where I'm ultimately going on my conclusion here. He makes the case that we're probably going to have some form of a universal basic income because a significant portion of the population can't cope, can't deal. Do you think a woman who is probably a fine woman, a very nice lady, who takes out that loan for a shit degree, is she a drug addict? Is she an alcoholic? Is she a potential shooter? Not exactly. Does she know what the fuck she's doing? Not exactly. And this problem is expanding. Absolutely expanding. And the technology is creating a strangulation around people. They can't deal. They can't reason. They can't think. It's all just about me, 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 me. Look at me. Are you not that bright with bad arguments? It doesn't make a difference. Look at me. Listen to me roar. Do I think I'm all that? I don't think I'm all that, but I know I do something that most people don't do. I get on this podcast and I talk to some of the best minds in the world that come at me constantly with diversity of subject, diversity of content. I'm forced is not a good word. I have to is not necessarily nice either. If I'm going to have a conversation with them on this podcast, I need to read their books. I need to know what they're all about. And when you stay in that constant form of education, you're robust. You're kind of not breakable. You kind of get how the game is played. And maybe it's harder for young people today to understand how the game is played because they don't have any frame of reference for when the game was not played, meaning they don't remember. They were born after Netscape IPO, August 1995. They have no recollection. All they know is constant connection. All they know is constant comparison, constant contrast. Their minds have been wired differently. Go back for a second to the shooters. Clearly, we have a problem with white guy shooters in America, isolated, late teen, 20-something, losers, basically, who don't have a girlfriend, have never kissed a girl, never had sex, and they sit in their house and they're isolated. And they take in all of this information, a lot of it completely negative shit. And then one day they wake up and they snap. And they go and get the damn gun and they kill 30, 40 people. Now here's the thing about society now. There's a certain permissiveness. People don't speak up. They don't say anything. They don't communicate. Do we care enough about each other? Do we care enough about each person that they have a chance to go make a dent, to do something? I don't think we do, because we're lying to them. Like this poor girl who thought, I need a $500,000 loan to get a shit degree that I can't make any money with. We lied to her. We told her something that was not true, and she believed it. And millions of other kids around the world, especially in America, are going down this same path. And their parents who were born in the 60s, 70s, 80s, they're idiots. Absolute idiots to allow their children to take on this form of debt. But Michael, it's not fair. Give me a break. If you really want to get ahead, if you want to get educated, you can go online and you can find the best professors available. You can find the content. I dare say you would have a much better education by just listening to every damn TED Talk than you would getting the typical BA crap degree from either a name or a no-name college or university. Back to Adam's point on the universal basic income. What do you do with people that can't think? Adams goes down the path of IQ, not in a negative way. He said, 100 years ago, if some guy had an 80 IQ, wasn't that smart, but a good stand-up person, there weren't all these influences that could make him go crazy. Not all these potential addictions. A job? It was manual labor. What's the gig, man? What's the gig? What do I got to do? Lift some boxes. Do this. Do the farm work. Get paid. Go home. Have some kids. Do whatever. You didn't sit around all night looking at what your neighbor was doing. Your neighbor who might be your neighbor who might be smarter, more educated. Your neighbor who might not be as smart, might be far less educated. I think that's part of the trick here, is you can't give a shit. I get that. I'm sure a lot of listeners in this podcast get that you can't give a shit. You can't give a shit what other people think about you. If you do, you're screwed. How are you going to achieve? But it's clear as day that a huge number of people care so damn much about what other people think about them. And they can't operate. They can't operate in the modern world. This is where Adams goes on his point about the universal basic income. If people are crapped out in the brain, they're kind of zombies, but then they are participating in society just on emotion or addiction or whatever whim they have at the moment. Man, that's terrible for the advancement of humanity. Does that mean there are some people who, by sheer force of will, sheer force of education, natural talent, who are starting to have a leg up on a lot of other people? You can damn well be sure that's true. Now, I'm not going to go into the universal basic income in any in-depth way here. I don't know if it's even feasible. What struck me about hearing about it, because I've condemned it in the past, but when I thought about what Adams was saying, that a significant portion of the population cannot deal in the modern world, and that's kind of the explanation for all the issues that I brought up today. People that can't think. You have to be able to think in the modern world. If you can't, you're just kind of like a zombie, making the wrong decisions, bringing society down. So I don't know if it's even feasible to pull the money together, because obviously we're spending a lot of money on a lot of people already in assorted welfare programs. And when you have a woman, for example, this woman with a $500,000 loan, perhaps a very nice lady, when she's going down her path, never to be repaid, could there have not been a better solution for her? It's kind of like giving the teenager that has no concept of money when he gets to college, and they do this in college. They give those new teenagers a credit card and they gack them up on debt. They gack them up on credit card debt. That's nuts. But you know what? Some of those big banks in your portfolio, the reason their profits look so good because they're basically loan sharks that have got dumb people paying huge interest rates on debts they're never going to repay. Back to my point, back to Adam's point. A lot of people just can't deal. They don't know what to do. Do I know if universal basic income will solve this? My guess is probably not. Because it's going to be damn difficult to start to draw a line that says some people can't deal and some people can deal. That's the issue where I think a lot of people just break down. An admission that something in humanity is now broken. And I agree with Adams. It's broken, not to be fixed. This technology stuff is going to accelerate. It's not going to decelerate. You can only expect all these problems to go hit the gas, hit the acceleration, and just roar on. To tie this into my trading world for a second, trend following is kind of a hack around all the chaos. Because you can be that person who's glued to the screen all day long, feeling like you need all that emotion. Or you can be the person that has an approach where you sit back and say, this stuff is not relevant to me. I don't care. I don't care about the fundamental stuff. Let me just have an approach with some risk management to follow the momentum, and I'm happy. I'm okay. But if you spend your day thinking about what your neighbor does in the markets, what kind of money your neighbor is making, you're psychologically already damaged goods. You're toast. I love with all these examples, and there's a million more. Again, I see them on the podcast interviews here. But we've got a thinking problem. A major thinking problem. What's the solution? I don't know if there's a solution for everybody. Is there a solution for you? That might be the better way to approach it. Is there a solution for you and your friends and your family? And if you can take care of that business, you got a leg up.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.